he caught sight of a fig tree by the road and went to it. But he found nothing on it except leaves. And he said to it,
"Let no fruit come from you ever again."
And the fig tree withered instantly. When the disciples saw this, they were amazed and said,
"How is it that the fig tree withered instantly?"
In answer, Jesus said to them,
"Truly I say to you, if you have faith and do not doubt, not only will you do what I did to the fig tree, but even if you say to this mountain, 'Be lifted up and thrown into the sea,' it will happen. And all the things you ask in prayer, having faith, you will receive."
After he went into the temple, the chief priests and the elders of the people came up to him while he was teaching and said,
"By what authority do you do these things? And who gave you this authority?"
In reply, Jesus said to them,
"I will also ask you one thing. If you tell me, then I will also tell you by what authority I do these things. The baptism by John, from what source was it? From heaven or from men?"
But they began to reason among themselves, saying,
"If we say, 'From heaven,' he will say to us, 'Why then did you not believe him?'
But if we say, 'From men,' we have the crowd to fear, for they all regard John as a prophet."
So they answered Jesus,
"We do not know."
He in turn said to them,
"Neither am I telling you by what authority I do these things. What do you think? A man had 2 children. Going up to the first, he said, 'Child, go work today in the vineyard.' In answer, this one said, 'I will not.' But afterward, he felt regret and went out. Approaching the second, he said the same. This one replied, 'I will, sir,' but did not go out. Which of the 2 did the will of his father?"
They said,
The first.
Jesus said to them,
"Truly I say to you, that the tax collectors and the prostitutes are going ahead of you into the kingdom of God. For John came to you in a way of righteousness, but you did not believe him. However, the tax collectors and the prostitutes believed him, and even when you saw this, you did not feel regret afterward so as to believe him." Here another illustration. There was a man, a landowner, who planted a vineyard and put a fence around it, and dug a winepress in it and erected a tower. Then he leased it to cultivators and traveled abroad. When the fruit season came around, he sent his slaves to the cultivators to collect his fruit. However, the cultivators took his slaves, and they beat one up, another they killed, another they stoned. Again he sent other slaves, more than the first group, but they did the same to these. Lastly, he sent his son to them, saying, "They will respect my son." On seeing the son, the cultivators said among themselves, "This is the heir. Come, let us kill him and get his inheritance." So they took him and threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. Therefore, when the owner of the vineyard comes, what will he do to those cultivators?
They said to him,
Because they are evil, he will bring a terrible destruction on them, and will lease the vineyard to other cultivators, who will give him the fruits when they become due.
Jesus said to them,
Did you never read in the Scriptures, "The stone that the builders rejected, this has become the chief cornerstone. This has come from Jehovah, and it is marvelous in our eyes." This is why I say to you, the kingdom of God will be taken from you and be given to a nation producing its fruits. Also, the person falling on this stone will be shattered. As for anyone on whom it falls, it will crush him.
When the chief priests and the Pharisees heard his illustrations, they knew that he was speaking about them. Although they wanted to seize him, They feared the crowds, because these regarded him as a prophet. Once more Jesus spoke to them with illustrations, saying,
"The kingdom of the heavens may be likened to a king who made a marriage feast for his son. And he sent his slaves to call those invited to the marriage feast, but they were unwilling to come. Again he sent other slaves, saying, 'Tell those invited, look, I have prepared my dinner. My bulls and fattened animals are slaughtered, and everything is ready. Come to the marriage feast.' But unconcerned they went off, one to his own field, another to his business. But the rest, seizing his slaves, treated them insolently and killed them. The king grew wrathful and sent his armies and killed those murderers and burned their city. Then he said to his slaves, 'The marriage feast is ready, but those invited were not worthy. Therefore go to the roads leading out of the city and invite anyone you find to the marriage feast.' Accordingly, those slaves went out to the roads and gathered all they found, both wicked and good, and the room for the wedding ceremonies was filled with those dining. When the king came in to inspect the guests, he caught sight of a man not wearing a marriage garment. So he said to him, 'Fellow, how did you get in here without a marriage garment?' He was speechless. Then the king said to his servants, 'Bind him hand and foot and throw him into the darkness outside. There is where his weeping and the gnashing of his teeth will be. For there are many invited, but few chosen.'"
Then the Pharisees went and conspired together in order to trap him in his speech. So they sent their disciples to him, together with party followers of Herod, saying,
"Teacher, we know you are truthful and teach the way of God in truth. And you do not seek anyone's favor, for you do not look at the outward appearance of people. Tell us then, what do you think? Is it lawful to pay head tax to Caesar or not?"
But Jesus, knowing their wickedness, said,
"Why do you put me to the test, hypocrites? Show me the tax coin."
They brought him a denarius. He said to them,
"Whose image and inscription is this?"
They said,
"Caesar's."
Then he said to them,
"Pay back therefore Caesar's things to Caesar, but God's things to God."
When they heard that, they were amazed, and they left him and went away. On that day the Sadducees, who say there is no resurrection, came and asked him,
"Teacher, Moses said, 'If any man dies without having children, his brother must marry his wife and raise up offspring for his brother.'"
Now there were 7 brothers with us. The first married and died, and having no offspring, he left his wife for his brother. The same thing happened with the second and the third, through all 7. Last of all, the woman died.
So in the resurrection, of the 7, whose wife will she be? For they all had her as a wife.
In reply, Jesus said to them,
"You are mistaken, because you know neither the Scriptures nor the power of God. For in the resurrection, neither do men marry, nor are women given in marriage, but they are as angels in heaven. Regarding the resurrection of the dead, have you not read what was spoken to you by God, who said, 'I am the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob'? He is the God not of the dead, but of the living."
On hearing that, the crowds were astounded at his teaching. After the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they came together in one group. And one of them, versed in the law, tested him by asking,
"Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?"
He said to him,
"You must love Jehovah your God with your whole heart, and with your whole soul, and with your whole mind." This is the greatest and first commandment. The second, like it, is this: you must love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments the whole law hangs, and the prophets.
Now while the Pharisees were gathered together, Jesus asked them,
"What do you think about the Christ? Whose son is he?"
They said to him,
David's.
He asked them,
"How is it then that David under inspiration calls him Lord, saying, 'Jehovah said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I put your enemies beneath your feet'? If then David calls him Lord, how is he his son?"
And nobody was able to say a word in reply to him, and from that day on, no one dared to question him any further. Then Jesus spoke to the crowds and to his disciples, saying,
"The scribes and the Pharisees have seated themselves in the seat of Moses. Therefore, all the things they tell you, do and observe, but do not do according to their deeds, for they say, but they do not practice what they say. They bind up heavy loads and put them on the shoulders of men, but they themselves are not willing to budge them with their finger. All the works they do to be seen by men, for they broaden the scripture-containing cases that they wear as safeguards, and lengthen the fringes of their garments. They like the most prominent place at evening meals, and the front seats in the synagogues, and the greetings in the marketplaces, and to be called rabbi by men. But you, do not you be called rabbi, for one is your teacher, and all of you are brothers. Moreover, do not call anyone your father on earth, for one is your Father, the heavenly one. Neither be called leaders, for your leader is one, the Christ. But the greatest one among you must be your minister. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you shut up the kingdom of the heavens before men. For you yourselves do not go in, neither do you permit those on their way in to go in. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you travel over sea and dry land to make one proselyte, and when he becomes one, you make him a subject for Gehenna twice as much so as yourselves. Woe to you, blind guides, who say, if anyone swears by the temple, it is nothing. But if anyone swears by the gold of the temple, he is under obligation. Fools and blind ones, which in fact is greater, the gold or the temple that has sanctified the gold? Moreover, if anyone swears by the altar, it is nothing. But if anyone swears by the gift on it, he is under obligation. Blind ones, which in fact is greater, the gift or the altar that sanctifies the gift? Therefore, whoever swears by the altar is swearing by it and by all the things on it, and whoever swears by the temple is swearing by it and by the one inhabiting it, and whoever swears by heaven is swearing by the throne of God and by the one sitting on it. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you give the tenth of the mint and the dill and the cumin, but you have disregarded the weightier matters of the law, namely justice and mercy and faithfulness. These things it was necessary to do, yet not to disregard the other things. Blind guides, who strain out the gnat, but gulp down the camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you cleanse the outside of the cup and of the dish, but inside they are full of greediness and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee, cleanse first the inside of the cup and of the dish, so that the outside of it may also become clean. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you resemble whitewashed graves, which outwardly indeed appear beautiful, but inside are full of dead men's bones and of every sort of uncleanness. In the same way, on the outside, you appear righteous to men, but inside you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you build the graves of the prophets and decorate the tombs of the righteous ones. And you say, if we had lived in the days of our forefathers, we would not have shared with them in shedding the blood of the prophets. Therefore, you are testifying against yourselves that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets. Well then, fill up the measure of your forefathers. Serpents, offspring of vipers, how will you flee from the judgment of Gehenna? For this reason, I am sending to you prophets and wise men and public instructors. Some of them you will kill and execute on stakes, and some of them you will scourge in your synagogues and persecute from city to city, so that there may come upon you all the righteous blood spilled on earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the sanctuary and the altar. Truly I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the killer of the prophets and stoner of those sent to her. How often I wanted to gather your children together, the way a hen gathers her chicks under her wings. But you did not want it. Look, your house is abandoned to you. For I say to you, you will by no means see me from now until you say, blessed is the one who comes in Jehovah's name.
Now as Jesus was departing from the temple, his disciples approached to show him the buildings of the temple. In response, he said to them,
Do you not see all these things? Truly I say to you, by no means will a stone be left here upon a stone, and not be thrown down.
While he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples approached him privately, saying,
Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your presence and of the conclusion of the system of things?
In answer, Jesus said to them,
Look out that nobody misleads you, for many will come on the basis of my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will mislead many. You are going to hear of wars and reports of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for these things must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be food shortages and earthquakes in one place after another. All these things are a beginning of pangs of distress. Then people will hand you over to tribulation, and will kill you, and you will be hated by all the nations on account of my name. Then too many will be stumbled, and will betray one another, and will hate one another. Many false prophets will arise and mislead many, and because of the increasing of lawlessness, the love of the greater number will grow cold. But the one who has endured to the end will be saved. And this good news of the kingdom will be preached in all the inhabited earth for a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come. Therefore, when you catch sight of the disgusting thing that causes desolation, as spoken about by Daniel the prophet, standing in a holy place, let the reader use discernment. Then let those in Judea begin fleeing to the mountains. Let the man on the housetop not come down to take the goods out of his house, and let the man in the field not return to pick up his outer garment. Woe to the pregnant women and those nursing a baby in those days. Keep praying that your flight may not occur in winter time, nor on the Sabbath day, for then there will be great tribulation, such as has not occurred since the world's beginning until now, no, nor will occur again. In fact, unless those days were cut short, no flesh would be saved. But on account of the chosen ones, those days will be cut short. Then if anyone says to you, "Look, here is the Christ," or "There," do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and will perform great signs and wonders so as to mislead, if possible, even the chosen ones. Look, I have forewarned you. Therefore, if people say to you, "Look, he is in the wilderness," do not go out. "Look, he is in the inner rooms," do not believe it. For just as the lightning comes out of the east and shines over to the west, so the presence of the Son of Man will be. Wherever the carcass is, there the eagles will be gathered together. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and all the tribes of the earth will beat themselves in grief, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send out his angels with a great trumpet sound, and they will gather his chosen ones together from the four winds, from one extremity of the heavens to their other extremity. Now learn this illustration from the fig tree. Just as soon as its young branch grows tender and sprouts its leaves, you know that summer is near. Likewise also you, when you see all these things, know that he is near at the doors. Truly I say to you, that this generation will by no means pass away until all these things happen. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. Concerning that day and hour, nobody knows, neither the angels of the heavens nor the Son, but only the Father. For just as the days of Noah were, so the presence of the Son of Man will be. For as they were in those days before the flood, eating and drinking, men marrying and women being given in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and they took no note until the flood came and swept them all away, so the presence of the Son of Man will be. Then 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken along, and the other abandoned. 2 women will be grinding at the handmill, one will be taken along, and the other abandoned. Keep on the watch, therefore, because you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. But know one thing, if the householder had known in what watch the thief was coming, he would have kept awake, and not allowed his house to be broken into. On this account, you too prove yourselves ready, because the Son of Man is coming at an hour that you do not think to be it. Who really is the faithful and discreet slave, whom his master appointed over his domestics to give them their food at the proper time? Happy is that slave if his master on coming finds him doing so. Truly I say to you, he will appoint him over all his belongings. But if ever that evil slave says in his heart, "My master is delaying," and he starts to beat his fellow slaves, and to eat and drink with the confirmed drunkards, the master of that slave will come on a day that he does not expect, and in an hour that he does not know, and he will punish him with the greatest severity, and will assign him his place with the hypocrites. There is where his weeping and the gnashing of his teeth will be. Then the kingdom of the heavens may be likened to 10 virgins, who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, and 5 were discreet. For the foolish took their lamps, but took no oil with them, whereas the discreet took oil in their flasks along with their lamps. While the bridegroom was delaying, they all became drowsy and fell asleep. Right in the middle of the night, there was a shout, "Here is the bridegroom! Go out to meet him!" Then all those virgins got up and put their lamps in order. The foolish said to the discreet, "Give us some of your oil, because our lamps are about to go out." The discreet answered, saying, "Perhaps there may not be enough for both us and you. Go instead to those who sell it, and buy some for yourselves." While they were going off to buy it, the bridegroom came. The virgins who were ready went in with him to the marriage feast, and the door was shut. Afterward, the rest of the virgins also came, saying, "Sir, sir, open to us." In answer he said, "I tell you the truth, I do not know you. Keep on the watch, therefore, because you know neither the day nor the hour. For it is just like a man about to travel abroad, who summoned his slaves and entrusted his belongings to them. He gave 5 talents to one, 2 to another, and 1 to still another, to each according to his own ability, and he went abroad. Immediately, the one who received the 5 talents went and did business with them, and gained 5 more. Likewise, the one who received the 2 gained 2 more. But the slave who received just 1 went off and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those slaves came and settled accounts with them. So the one who had received the 5 talents came forward and brought 5 additional talents, saying, "Master, you entrusted 5 talents to me. See, I gained 5 talents more." His master said to him, "Well done, good and faithful slave. You were faithful over a few things. I will appoint you over many things. Enter into the joy of your master." Next, the one who had received the 2 talents came forward and said, "Master, you entrusted 2 talents to me. See, I gained 2 talents more." His master said to him, "Well done, good and faithful slave. You were faithful over a few things. I will appoint you over many things. Enter into the joy of your master." Finally, the slave who had received the 1 talent came forward and said, "Master, I knew you to be a demanding man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you did not winnow. So I grew afraid and went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours." In reply, his master said to him, "Wicked and sluggish slave, you knew, did you, that I reaped where I did not sow and gathered where I did not winnow? Well, then you should have deposited my money with the bankers, and on my coming I would have received it back with interest. Therefore, take the talent away from him and give it to the one who has the 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have an abundance. But the one who does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. And throw the good-for-nothing slave out into the darkness outside. There is where his weeping and the gnashing of his teeth will be. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, then he will sit down on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate people one from another, just as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will put the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who have been blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the founding of the world. For I became hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you received me hospitably, naked, and you clothed me. I fell sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you visited me." Then the righteous ones will answer him with the words, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and receive you hospitably, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and visit you?" In reply, the king will say to them, "Truly I say to you, to the extent that you did it to one of the least of these my brothers, you did it to me." Then he will say to those on his left, "Go away from me, you who have been cursed, into the everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I became hungry, but you gave me nothing to eat, and I was thirsty, but you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, but you did not receive me hospitably, naked, but you did not clothe me, sick and in prison, but you did not look after me." Then they too will answer with the words, "Lord, when did we see you hungry, or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not minister to you?" Then he will answer them, saying, "Truly I say to you, to the extent that you did not do it to one of these least ones, you did not do it to me." These will depart into everlasting cutting off, but the righteous ones into everlasting life.
But when they were passing by early in the morning, they saw the fig tree already withered from its roots. Peter, remembering it, said to him,
"Rabbi, see, the fig tree that you cursed has withered."
In reply, Jesus said to them,
"Have faith in God. Truly I say to you that whoever tells this mountain, 'Be lifted up and thrown into the sea,' and does not doubt in his heart, but has faith that what he says is going to happen, he will have it happen. This is why I tell you, all the things you pray and ask for, have faith that you have received them, and you will have them. And when you stand praying, forgive whatever you have against anyone, so that your Father who is in the heavens may also forgive you your trespasses."
They came again to Jerusalem. And as he was walking in the temple, the chief priests and the scribes and the elders came and said to him,
"By what authority do you do these things? Or who gave you this authority to do these things?"
Jesus said to them,
"I will ask you one question. Answer me, and I will tell you by what authority I do these things. Was the baptism by John from heaven or from men? Answer me."
So they began to reason among themselves, saying,
"If we say, 'From heaven,' he will say, 'Why then did you not believe him?'
But dare we say, 'From men'?"
They were in fear of the crowd, for these all held that John had really been a prophet. So they answered Jesus,
"We do not know."
Jesus said to them,
"Neither am I telling you by what authority I do these things."
Then he started to speak to them with illustrations.
A man planted a vineyard and put a fence around it, and dug a vat for the winepress, and erected a tower. Then he leased it to cultivators and traveled abroad. In due season he sent a slave to the cultivators to collect some of the fruits of the vineyard from them. But they took him, beat him, and sent him away empty-handed. Again he sent another slave to them, and that one they struck on the head and dishonored. And he sent another, and that one they killed, and many others, some of whom they beat, and some of whom they killed. One more he had, a beloved son. He sent him to them last, saying, "They will respect my son." But those cultivators said among themselves, "This is the heir. Come, let us kill him, and the inheritance will be ours." So they took him and killed him, and threw him out of the vineyard. what will the owner of the vineyard do? He will come and kill the cultivators and will give the vineyard to others. Did you never read this scripture? The stone that the builders rejected, this has become the chief cornerstone. This has come from Jehovah, and it is marvelous in our eyes.
At that they wanted to seize him, but they feared the crowd, for they knew that he spoke the illustration with them in mind. So they left him and went away. Next, they sent to him some of the Pharisees and of the party followers of Herod, in order to catch him in his speech. On arriving, these said to him,
Teacher, we know you are truthful, and you do not seek anyone's favor, for you do not look at the outward appearance of people, but you teach the way of God in line with truth. Is it lawful to pay head tax to Caesar or not? Should we pay or should we not pay?
Detecting their hypocrisy, he said to them,
Why do you put me to the test? Bring me a denarius to look at.
They brought one, and he said to them,
Whose image and inscription is this?
They said to him,
Caesar's.
Jesus then said,
Pay back Caesar's things to Caesar, but God's things to God.
And they were amazed at him. Now the Sadducees, who say there is no resurrection, came and asked him,
Teacher, Moses wrote us that if someone's brother dies and leaves a wife behind but does not leave a child, his brother should take the wife and raise up offspring for his brother.
There were 7 brothers. The first took a wife, but when he died he left no offspring. And the second married her, but died without leaving offspring. And the third the same way. And all 7 left no offspring. Last of all, the woman also died.
In the resurrection, whose wife will she be? For the 7 had her as a wife.
Jesus said to them,
Is not this why you are mistaken? Because you know neither the Scriptures nor the power of God. For when they rise from the dead, neither do men marry, nor are women given in marriage, but they are as angels in the heavens. But concerning the dead being raised up, have you not read in the book of Moses, in the account about the thorn bush, that God said to him, I am the God of Abraham, and God of Isaac, and God of Jacob. He is a God, not of the dead, but of the living. You are very much mistaken.
One of the scribes, who had come up and heard them disputing, knowing that he had answered them in a fine way, asked him,
Which commandment is first of all?
Jesus answered,
The first is, Hear, O Israel, Jehovah our God is one Jehovah, and you must love Jehovah your God with your whole heart, and with your whole soul, and with your whole mind, and with your whole strength. The second is this, you must love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these.
The scribe said to him,
Teacher, you spoke well, in line with truth. He is one, and there is no other besides him. And to love him with one's whole heart, with one's whole understanding, and with one's whole strength, and to love one's neighbor as oneself, is worth far more than all the whole burnt offerings and sacrifices.
At this Jesus, discerning that he had answered intelligently, said to him,
You are not far from the kingdom of God.
But no one had the courage to question him any more. However, as Jesus continued teaching in the temple, he said,
How is it that the scribes say that the Christ is David's son? By the Holy Spirit, David himself said, Jehovah said to my Lord, "Sit at my right hand until I put your enemies beneath your feet." David himself calls him Lord, so how can it be that he is his son?
And the large crowd was listening to him with pleasure. And in his teaching, he went on to say,
Beware of the scribes who want to walk around in robes, and want greetings in the marketplaces, and front seats in the synagogues, and the most prominent places at evening meals. They devour the houses of the widows, and for show they make long prayers. These will receive a more severe judgment.
And he sat down with the treasury chests in view, and began observing how the crowd was dropping money into the treasury chests, and many rich people were dropping in many coins. Now a poor widow came and dropped in 2 small coins of very little value. So he called his disciples to him and said to them,
Truly I say to you, that this poor widow put in more than all the others who put money into the treasury chests. For they all put in out of their surplus, but she, out of her want, put in everything she had, all she had to live on.
As he was going out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him,
Teacher, see, what wonderful stones and buildings!
However, Jesus said to him,
Do you see these great buildings? By no means will a stone be left here upon a stone and not be thrown down.
As he was sitting on the Mount of Olives with the temple in view, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked him privately,
Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign when all these things are to come to a conclusion?
So Jesus began to tell them,
Look out that nobody misleads you. Many will come on the basis of my name, saying, I am he, and will mislead many. Moreover, when you hear of wars and reports of wars, do not be alarmed. These things must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in one place after another. There will also be food shortages. These are a beginning of pangs of distress. As for you, look out for yourselves. People will hand you over to local courts, and you will be beaten in synagogues, and be put on the stand before governors and kings for my sake, for a witness to them. Also, in all the nations, the good news has to be preached first. And when they are taking you to hand you over, do not be anxious beforehand about what to say, but whatever is given you in that hour, say this, for you are not the one speaking, but the Holy Spirit is. Furthermore, brother will deliver brother over to death, and a father a child, and children will rise up against parents and have them put to death. And you will be hated by all people on account of my name. But the one who has endured to the end will be saved. However, when you catch sight of the disgusting thing that causes desolation, standing where it should not be, let the reader use discernment. Then let those in Judea begin fleeing to the mountains. Let the man on the housetop not come down, nor go inside to take anything out of his house. And let the man in the field not return to the things behind, to pick up his outer garment. Woe to the pregnant women and those nursing a baby in those days. Keep praying that it may not occur in wintertime, for those days will be days of a tribulation such as has not occurred from the beginning of the creation that God created until that time, and will not occur again. In fact, unless Jehovah had cut short the days, no flesh would be saved. But on account of the chosen ones, whom he has chosen, he has cut short the days. Then too, if anyone says to you, "See, here is the Christ," or "See, there he is," do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and will perform signs and wonders to lead astray, if possible, the chosen ones. You then watch out. I have told you all things beforehand. But in those days, after that tribulation, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will be falling out of heaven, and the powers that are in the heavens will be shaken. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. And then he will send out the angels, and will gather his chosen ones together from the four winds, from earth's extremity to heaven's extremity. Now learn this illustration from the fig tree. Just as soon as its young branch grows tender and sprouts its leaves, you know that summer is near. Likewise, also you, when you see these things happening, know that he is near at the doors. Truly I say to you, that this generation will by no means pass away until all these things happen. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. Concerning that day or the hour, nobody knows, neither the angels in heaven nor the Son, but the Father. Keep looking, keep awake, for you do not know when the appointed time is. It is like a man traveling abroad, who left his house and gave the authority to his slaves, to each one his work, and commanded the doorkeeper to keep on the watch. Keep on the watch, therefore, for you do not know when the master of the house is coming, whether late in the day, or at midnight, or before dawn, or early in the morning, in order that when he comes suddenly, he does not find you sleeping. But what I say to you, I say to all, keep on the watch.
On one of the days while he was teaching the people in the temple and declaring the good news, the chief priests and the scribes with the elders came and said to him,
"Tell us, by what authority do you do these things? Or who gave you this authority?"
He replied to them,
I will also ask you a question, and you tell me. Was the baptism of John from heaven or from men?
Then they drew conclusions among themselves, saying,
If we say, "From heaven," he will say, "Why did you not believe him?"
But if we say, "From men," the people one and all will stone us, for they are convinced that John was a prophet.
So they replied that they did not know its source. Jesus said to them,
Neither am I telling you by what authority I do these things.
Then he began to tell the people this illustration.
A man planted a vineyard and leased it to cultivators, and he traveled abroad for a considerable time. In due season he sent a slave to the cultivators, so that they would give him some of the fruit of the vineyard. The cultivators, however, sent him away empty-handed after beating him. But again he sent another slave. That one also they beat and humiliated and sent away empty-handed. Yet again he sent a third. This one also they wounded and threw out. At this the owner of the vineyard said, What should I do? I will send my son, the beloved. They will likely respect this one. When the cultivators caught sight of him, they reasoned with one another, saying, This is the heir. Let us kill him, so that the inheritance may become ours. So they threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. What then will the owner of the vineyard do to them? He will come and kill these cultivators, and will give the vineyard to others.
On hearing this, they said,
"Never may that happen."
But he looked straight at them and said,
"What then does this mean, where it is written, 'The stone that the builders rejected, this has become the chief cornerstone. Everyone falling on that stone will be shattered. As for anyone on whom it falls, it will crush him.'"
The scribes and the chief priests then sought to get their hands on him in that very hour, but they feared the people, for they realized that he told this illustration with them in mind. And after observing him closely, they sent men whom they had secretly hired to pretend that they were righteous, in order to catch him in his speech, so as to turn him over to the government and to the authority of the governor. And they questioned him, saying,
"Teacher, we know you speak and teach correctly, and show no partiality, but you teach the way of God in line with truth. Is it lawful for us to pay head tax to Caesar or not?"
But he detected their cunning, and said to them,
"Show me a denarius. Whose image and inscription does it have?"
They said,
"Caesar's."
He said to them,
"By all means, then, pay back Caesar's things to Caesar, but God's things to God."
Well, they were not able to trap him in his speech before the people, but amazed at his answer, they became silent. However, some of the Sadducees, those who say there is no resurrection, came and asked him,
"Teacher, Moses wrote us, if a man's brother dies leaving a wife, but he was childless, his brother should take the wife and raise up offspring for his brother."
Now there were 7 brothers. The first took a wife but died childless. So the second and the third married her. Likewise even all 7. They died and left no children. Finally the woman also died.
Consequently, in the resurrection, whose wife will she become? For the 7 had her as a wife.
Jesus said to them,
"The children of this system of things marry and are given in marriage. But those who have been counted worthy of gaining that system of things and the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. In fact, neither can they die any more, for they are like the angels, and they are God's children by being children of the resurrection. But that the dead are raised up, even Moses made known in the account about the thorn bush, when he calls Jehovah the God of Abraham and God of Isaac and God of Jacob. He is a God not of the dead, but of the living, for they are all living to him."
In response, some of the scribes said,
"Teacher, you spoke well."
For they no longer had the courage to ask him a single question. In turn, he asked them,
"How is it, they say, that the Christ is David's son? For David himself says in the book of Psalms, 'Jehovah said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I place your enemies as a stool for your feet.' David therefore calls him Lord. So how is he his son?"
Then, while all the people were listening, he said to his disciples,
"Beware of the scribes who like to walk around in robes, and who love greetings in the marketplaces, and front seats in the synagogues, and the most prominent places at evening meals, and who devour the houses of the widows, and for show make long prayers. These will receive a more severe judgment."
Now as he looked up, he saw the rich dropping their gifts into the treasury chests. Then he saw a needy widow drop in 2 small coins of very little value. And he said,
"Truly I say to you, that this poor widow put in more than they all did. For all of these put in gifts out of their surplus, But she, out of her want, put in all the means of living she had.
Later, when some were speaking about the temple, how it was adorned with fine stones and dedicated things, he said,
As for these things that you now see, the days will come when not a stone will be left upon a stone and not be thrown down.
Then they questioned him, saying,
Teacher, when will these things actually be? And what will be the sign when these things are to occur?
He said,
Look out that you are not misled, for many will come on the basis of my name, saying, I am he, and the due time is near. Do not go after them. Furthermore, when you hear of wars and disturbances, do not be terrified, for these things must take place first, but the end will not occur immediately.
Then he said to them,
Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes, and in one place after another, food shortages and pestilences, and there will be fearful sights, and from heaven great signs. But before all these things happen, people will lay their hands on you and persecute you, handing you over to the synagogues and prisons. You will be brought before kings and governors for the sake of my name. It will result in your giving a witness. Therefore, resolve in your hearts not to rehearse beforehand how to make your defense. For I will give you words and wisdom that all your opposers together will not be able to resist or dispute. Moreover, you will be handed over even by parents and brothers and relatives and friends, and they will put some of you to death, and you will be hated by all people because of my name. But not even a hair of your heads will perish. By your endurance, you will preserve your lives. However, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by encamped armies, then know that the desolating of her has drawn near. Then let those in Judea begin fleeing to the mountains. Let those in the midst of her leave, and let those in the countryside not enter into her, because these are days for meting out justice, in order that all the things written may be fulfilled. Woe to the pregnant women, and those nursing a baby in those days, for there will be great distress on the land, and wrath against this people. And they will fall by the edge of the sword, and be led captive into all the nations, and Jerusalem will be trampled on by the nations until the appointed times of the nations are fulfilled. Also, there will be signs in the sun and moon and stars, and on the earth anguish of nations, not knowing the way out, because of the roaring of the sea and its agitation. People will become faint out of fear and expectation of the things coming upon the inhabited earth, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. But as these things start to occur, stand up straight and lift up your heads, because your deliverance is getting near.
With that, he told them an illustration.
Notice the fig tree and all the other trees. When they are budding, you see it for yourselves, and know that now the summer is near. Likewise also you, when you see these things happening, know that the kingdom of God is near. Truly I say to you that this generation will by no means pass away until all things happen. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. But pay attention to yourselves, that your hearts never become weighed down with overeating and heavy drinking and anxieties of life, and suddenly that day be instantly upon you as a snare. For it will come upon all those dwelling on the face of the whole earth. Keep awake then, all the time making supplication that you may succeed in escaping all these things that must occur, and in standing before the Son of Man.
So by day he would be teaching in the temple, but by night he would go out and lodge on the mountain called the Mount of Olives. And all the people would come to him early in the morning to hear him in the temple.
If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe to this channel, hit that like button, leave your comments below and share it with your friends. Thanks for watching. God bless.